All right. Let's see. Testing, testing. There we go. All right. Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Today is Mental Health Mondays. I missed last week's Mental Health Monday, so I haven't been here in about 2 weeks for Mental Health Monday. So this will be a nice catching up, getting back into the groove of things. Today I had a really fun topic to talk about, though, or at least a fun topic for me. I've always found this stuff kind of interesting. Some people maybe not so much. They might not enjoy it as much as I do, but that's okay. That probably just means they're normal. But uh, today we are going to be talking about the Dark Triad. So, for those of you who don't know what it is, obviously we're going to learn what it is, but it is a type of personality, or well, rather, it's three different personalities that, when combined, are well, not necessarily they don't necessarily have to be combined. I guess I don't know. Maybe I should just stop talking and let the experts tell you about it. But yeah, so basically, it's just three personalities that are well bad. That's they're just bad. Bad news bears, man. You don't want to be caught around one of these kinds of people. So we're going to talk about it because I think it's kind of interesting. We're going to talk about what it is. Got my handy dandy note card here. We're going to talk about what it is, where it comes from. We're going to talk about a whole lot of explanations for, behaviors for all three of the different personality types. We got some other forms that have came out because the dark triad is kind of old. It's a theory in psychology, by the way. I don't think I said that before. I don't believe it is a fact based. It's a theory. A lot of psychology is just theories, right? It's somebody said that this is the way things work, and they had decent evidence for it, and nobody has had a whole lot of evidence to disprove it, or there's just as much evidence to disprove it as there is to prove it. So it's considered a working theory, right? But there are other forms, other theories out there about the dark triad. There's the dark tetrad and the vulnerable dark triad and the light triad. So we're going to talk about those three too, as well as some criticisms that people have against the dark triad. And then, I got some tests that they take to see if you are a dark triad. I'm going to show you where you can take those tests, and then I'm going to take a few if we have time. So, yeah, that's basically what we're doing today for Mental Health Mondays. If you are watching this on YouTube, because I think as of right now, my cutie pie is probably the only one that's watching the live stream. Hey, cutie pie, hope you're enjoying your dinner. But to everybody else who sees this on YouTube, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the content. And if you like the channel, please leave a like and maybe subscribe for future videos. I cover all sorts of stuff on my live stream. Today on Mondays, Mental Health Mondays, it's always psychology or mental health related topics, obviously. Tuesday is my terrifying Tuesdays. Those are my favorite days. I cover anything scary, like tomorrow. For example, I am covering Reddit forest ranger stories. So if you don't know what those are, they don't sound creepy, but they're pretty fucking creepy. So uh, Tuesdays, everything scary. Wednesdays, I call them Wildlife Wednesdays. I cover something wildlife orientated. It's sometimes cryptozoology, other times just interesting topics. Let's see. This Wednesday will be Alabama cryptids. So man, I burp so much. It's insane. There's so many burps. Thank God they have a mute button. Otherwise, this whole stream would just be burps. Yeah, Alabama cryptids are what we do on Wednesday, so that'll be exciting. It's a whole list of different cryptids that I found that exist in Alabama. I thought I'd go through, get myths and legends will be on some terrifying Tuesdays, and then cryptids on Wildlife Wednesdays for each of the 50 states. So we're starting with Alabama. That's the only reason it's Alabama. I'm not from Alabama. I've never been to Alabama, but hopefully somebody who's from Alabama either tunes in on the stream that day or watches this on YouTube and figures out what they think. And then Thursday is my conspiracy theory Thursdays. First day of the month is usually just kind of a fun conspiracy theory. And this Thursday will be Nick Cage is a vampire. Yeah, that's a thing people actually believe. So we're going to see if it's actually true or not. We're going to dive into it. Spend a couple hours on it. And then Film Fridays, every Friday is my Film Buff Friday, where it's my second favorite day. That's where I cover anything film related. Right now, I'm kind of taking myself and you, the audience, whoever tunes in, along for a sort of a crash course into film theory. So we're going through film theory topics. We're going through some storytelling how-tos, like how to write a plot, how to, write character arcs, stuff like that. And then we're going to be diving into more like movie review orientated type stuff after I'm finished with all like the film theory stuff, right? So this Friday will be a 2 hour stream on a tour theory. So if you don't know what that is, definitely check it out, especially if you're a movie fan. I'm a huge movie fan, obviously. That's why I have a whole 2 3 hour stream on Fridays where I go over all different kinds of movie shit. So yeah, if you enjoy any of that stuff, then go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate that. And maybe come check me out on my Twitch stream. I know for whatever reason, a lot of YouTubers don't like Twitchers don't like YouTubers. I don't know what they call people that do Twitch. The Twitchers, YouTubers and Twitchers. So all the Twitchers, the Twitchies, they don't, seem to be jumping over on YouTube too often. And YouTubers don't seem to be jumping on Twitch. It's like they're like, gangs, man. You guys are like your own little Bloods and Crips. Like, fuck your side, no, fuck your side, fuck your stupid platform, no, fuck your dumb platform, fuck Jeff Bezos, so, but if you are one of those, Purple Hearts that slides in between the two gangs, then, you should come check out my Twitch channel. I made the Twitch channel actually only about a month ago now. Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is officially a month today that I started the YouTube channel. So hooray for me. And yeah, I get a couple people here and there that come in, jump on the stream and chat. But the whole point of me actually doing a live stream instead of just doing YouTube videos was I actually wanted that experience to have people, while I'm going over these kinds of topics, have people tune in and chat and say what's up and have a conversation while we're going over this interesting shit. Throw their 2 cents in and maybe argue a little bit, show some love, tell some jokes, cry some tears, maybe, I don't know. But, just hang out and have a good time. So if that sounds dope to you, then come check me out on my Twitch channel. In the meantime, though, let's go ahead and get going because I do have a bunch of stuff for you guys today, and I'm kind of on a schedule. So we're going to jump right into it with this video right here. What is the Dark Triad? This video is by a guy named Todd Grande, I think is how you pronounce his name. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to switch you guys over to my big YouTube screen so you guys can get a full vision of Todd here. And if I need to pick my nose, you can't see me. So Dr. Todd Grande, I picked his video because I really like his channel. It's a bigger channel. He's got about 2 million subscribers. He's a psychologist, and I really enjoy his stuff. This is actually one of his older videos. It's from 6 years ago, and you can kind of tell because he's got a funky ass green screen behind him that like slices off this part of his ear and this whole chunk of his face right there. But aside from the missing pieces of his face, it's a really good video. So we're just going to play the intro, give you an intro into what the Dark Triad is, and then I'm going to go ahead and throw you in to some what is that? Encyclopedia Britannica. All right, so check it out. So let's see what old Todd has to say.
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, what is the Dark Triad? If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. That way I won't miss anything new. Now, when we talk about the Dark Triad, we're talking about a theory that there are 3 specific personality
traits. I just want to note that I already told you that, so Todd's kind of, taking a cue from me. But yeah, like I said, it's a theory, not an actual fact.
Traits that can come together to cause specific difficulties. And these traits are narcissism, psychopathy, and a trait referred to as Machiavellianism. Now, the idea with this theory is that all 3 of these traits share a personality trait called antagonism, which we could conceptualize as low agreeableness on the 5-factor model. Now, a number of studies have been conducted on the Dark Triad. Sometimes they're referred to as the dark traits. I'll be using a study here published in 2018 by Vise and colleagues. And this study was actually a meta-analysis. So this study studied a number of other articles published on the Dark Triad.
We've talked about those meta studies before on my channel. We use them here or there because they're pretty awesome. So whenever I'm diving into something that's like study based, we use a lot of I try to get as many meta analysis as I can. But if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you would already know what that is. And you'd be like, fuck Todd, tell me something I don't know.
So the idea is that themes can be found by looking at a number of studies that would be missed in any particular one study. So let's take a look at these 3 different traits. Now, it's first important to understand that these are traits. These are not necessarily disorders like personality disorders. For example, with narcissism.
Mm. That's another important point to make. Sorry, I keep having to stop Todd here. Todd's a good guy. I hate to interrupt him, but I kind of do that for whole like fair use, issues and whatnot. Got to throw my 2 cents in and critique the video and whatever. But that is an important point to make there. We'll be diving in that a little bit later. Having these traits isn't the same as a disorder, and that is pretty important especially when it gets to like narcissism. There is the character trait of narcissism, and then there's the disorder, which is narcissistic personality disorder, two different things. So.
And psychopathy. We could conceptualize extreme narcissism in some cases as narcissistic personality disorder.
I already told you that.
We could conceptualize psychopathy sometimes, particularly extreme traits, as antisocial personality disorder. But that's not what we're talking about here necessarily with the Dark Triad. So in looking...
Okay. So that's Todd's intro there. Everybody give a golf clap for Todd. Now we're going to go ahead and let Todd take a rest over here. I think I actually got another one of his videos popped up later in the stream because that guy's YouTube channel is awesome. That was Dr. Todd Grande. So if you guys enjoy psychology stuff, I would definitely give him a like. Give him a like and subscribe to his channel because he's been doing at it a while and his videos are pretty good. He did eventually improve that green screen so his ears aren't getting sliced off anymore. So now his channel's pretty good. So I would, if you guys like psychology, like I said, check him out. Okay, so I'm going to direct your attention to this diagram over me right here. This is a, what do they call this? A plot diagram? I think they call it, no, it's not a plot diagram. This is I'm blanking on the name of this. Well, it's 3 circles, and these 3 circles intersect. I wish I remember the name of it. This is the plot that Kamala Harris said that she like super loves. She's like, oh my God, I love these kinds of these types of graphs. And so, well, she can tune into my show now and love my show because I got one of these graphs. So I'm going to go through each one of these individually. Here's our 3 traits, like Mr. Todd said: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. I think we're going to go with narcissism first. I'm going to give you guys a rundown on that. Let's just go through another quick rundown of the Dark Triad in case some of you weren't listening to Todd. You were too busy laughing at his missing ear. So the Dark Triad is a cluster of 3 negative personality traits: Machiavellianism and subclinical, which is non-pathological narcissism. Again, pathological or clinical narcissism would be narcissistic personality disorder, and psychopathy. That share certain features, including emotional coldness, duplicity, and aggressiveness. I believe duplicity is like very manipulative. Let me just check that. Don't want to steer you guys wrong. Contradictory doubleness of thought, speech, or action. The belaying of one's true intentions by deceptive words or actions. So deceptiveness, quality or state of being double or twofold. So like two-faced, right? Okay. And aggressiveness. The term was coined in 2002 by the Canadian psychologist Delroy Paulus, that would be unfortunate. Delroy Paulus and Kevin Williams, who described the 3 traits as overlapping but distinct. Although some psychologists have questioned the utility of grouping the traits together, we will talk about that a little farther in stream with some of the criticisms. Suggesting that the differences between them might be more important than their similarities, most other researchers have continued to rely on the concept. It is a pretty widely regarded theory. I think a lot of people have heard of this. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you folks out there who don't give a flying fuck about psychology have probably heard of this concept before, right? But the Dark Triad is generally considered to be helpful in understanding aversive behaviors in the workplace and broad cultural problems such as prejudice. In 2019, some psychologists even proposed expanding the concept of the Dark Triad to include another personality trait, sadism, to create the Dark Tetrad. And we'll talk about that a little bit, or I guess we won't, but we have a video where a couple of guys talk about it. Okay, so the theory of the Dark Triad recognizes specific characteristics associated with each personality trait. Thus, Machiavellianism is marked by a tendency towards manipulative behavior. Narcissism is marked by excessive self-importance and grandiosity. And psychopathy by callousness, impulsiveness, and thrill-seeking. Although narcissism and psychopathy can occur at extreme pathological levels, good old Todd told you that disrupt a person's ability to live a normal life, in the Dark Triad, they exist at a lower subclinical level, though even at the level they are vary along a continuum of intensity. Right. So we're going to get into cause and effects, what people believe are the cause and effects of growing, turning into one of these dark triad individuals. Um, but yeah, I find this whole topic to be very interesting because, I mean, for one, I think once we dive into it, everybody's going to be like, "Oh, I know somebody like that." Somebody you're going to know somebody that falls in at least one of these three categories, right? We all do. Uh, but there's also a theory, and I don't think that we would have enough time to get into it anyway, so I didn't throw up a web page on it. But there is a lot of theories, theoretical thoughts, people theorizing, people that believe that having the dark triad, or one of the traits on the dark triad, most especially Machiavellianism, but having a dark triad personality actually makes you more successful in life, which is a pretty horrible black pilled indictment on our current society if that were to be the case. That's just what a lot of people believe. I don't think that there's any, like, again, there's no proof that the dark triad is actually the real deal. It's like actually a thing. I mean, we do know there is people who exhibit these traits, and this is just a way of categorizing them. But as to whether or not you could actually like point at a motherfucker and say, "Oh, you're clearly a dark triad," that doesn't really exist, right? They have tests, and the tests go as far as they can, but they still only go so far, right? So anyways, all that being said, I was just kind of rambling there. That happens a lot. We're going to jump into narcissism first. So I don't know if you can read my screen, but here's a list of narcissistic personality traits. Grandiosity, it means that you think very highly of yourself. It's kind of regal thinking. Think the word grand, big, giant, inflated. Well, if you have grandiosity, like, that's your ego, big, giant, inflated. So yeah, and then exhibitionism. Uh, that's not exhibitionism. Exhibitionism is that's a fetish. Maybe I've been watching too much Pornhub. That's exhibitionism. Well, see, that's why I thought it was exhibitionism, because I don't even know if that's a word. Exhibitionism. Okay, well, I'll let somebody in the comment section tell me what that is, because I have no idea. Superiority, you believe you're superior to other people. Dominance, sense of entitlement, authority, and arrogance. I think everybody knows somebody like that, right? Exploitation, extroversion, self admiration, self improvement. I was not expecting that to be on the list. I hadn't read through this list yet. Self improvement, that's an interesting one. I would imagine, like, yeah, I'm pretty heavy into self improvement, and pretty heavy into like personal growth and things like that. And I have many times thought to myself, like, my continuous effort to improve on myself is, and to some degree, selfishness, because you're constantly thinking about yourself, right? So to some degree, that is, a bit selfish. I think narcissism, taking self-improvement, you'd have to take it to a whole nother level to be considered a narcissist, though, right? But vanity, sensitivity to criticism, self-sufficiency, that's wild. See, they're really trying to sell this shit, aren't they? They're like, "This is why you should be a narcissist." Narcissist. I almost said a Nazi. This is why you should be one of those guys. Pursuit of attention and sensations. Okay. But yeah, self sufficiency and self improvement. Weren't expecting those to be on the list, but you could see how, to some degree, those things, if they were dialed up to 11, could potentially be considered narcissism, right? Like I was saying, I have had that thought before in terms of self. Yeah, I already forgot the word. But anyways, okay. So narcissism. Let's talk a little bit more about this. Let's see what Britannica has to say about it. So, narcissism, or pathological self absorption, first identified as a mental disorder by the British essayist and physician Havelock Ellis in 1898. Narcissism is characterized by an inflated self image and addiction to fantasy, by an unusual coolness and composure shaken only when the narcissistic confidence is threatened, and by the tendency to take others for granted or to exploit them. That does cover most, like, narcissists. When we think of narcissism, we think of people who are very grandiose, think they're incredibly amazing, think they're the best thing that ever lived, the best thing created since sliced bread, yo. And you even looking at them wrong is an excuse to eat you alive, if even a perceived slight towards them, right? Um, there is a different type of narcissism called vulnerable narcissism, which we'll actually get into that a little bit later, because there's a whole triad based on the more vulnerable aspects of all three of these. uh, character traits. But vulnerable narcissism is more like you feel like the world isn't giving you the attention you deserve, and that makes you very what it's sensitive to other people, right? So any you have an idea that everybody's kind of out to get you or out to avoid the fact that you're better than them. You still think you're better than everybody, but it's paired with the idea that nobody is giving you enough attention, which makes you feel very sorry for yourself, right? So it's kind of something to that effect, right? We'll read about up on it a little bit later in the stream. um so yeah, this disorder, narcissism, is named for the mythological figure Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection. According to Sigmund Freud, narcissism is a normal stage in child development, but it is considered a disorder when it occurs after puberty. In psychology and personality theory, narcissism refers to one element of the so-called Dark Triad of related negative personality traits, the other two being Machiavellism and psychopathy. Yeah, so narcissism, I remember doing a lot of reading on narcissism when um, gosh, we're going on almost 10 years now. Fuck, I'm old. It's so crazy. Time could slow down a little bit. I wouldn't mind. Yeah, when I was like 26, 27, somewhere around there, maybe 27, 28, I was in therapy doing a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy, and did a little bit of reading on narcissism while I was going through therapy. And I remember reading that narcissistic traits do appear pretty normally. It's pretty common that narcissistic traits will actually appear in children and teenagers, right? Uh, and it's not because they're a bunch of fucking dickheads. I mean, kids can be dickheads, but they're not narcissists, the same way that an adult is a narcissist. They're narcissists because their brains aren't capable of conceptualizing a world outside of themselves. And that naturally turns into narcissism. That's almost very similar to how a narcissistic adult would view the world, right? As they have a hard time viewing the worlds as they relate to it, like them being a part of a bigger thing. It's all about them. The world revolves around them. And that's kind of, when you're a kid, of course it does, because you don't think of everybody else as a human like you. That concept hasn't really smacked you in the face yet. Self-realization hasn't just pimp slapped you and taken all your confidence yet. So kids tend to be pretty narcissistic, and I do believe there's even psychologists. I remember reading 10 years ago. I don't know where it's at now, but I remember close to 10 years ago, more like 6 years ago. I'll be nicer to myself. More like 7 or 6 years ago, when I was reading about this, there was psychologists who were of the opinion that narcissism it doesn't actually stop after puberty, but closer more to about 25 years old. Right around the time your brain is done developing is around the time that you should consider a person that still has narcissistic traits. If they're 25 and they still have narcissistic personality traits, now it might be a problem. But if they just coughs and burps happening everywhere, sorry. But if a person is younger than 25 and they're showing narcissistic traits, it could be because their brain is still developing, right? So, and then also another really interesting thing I found was narcissism is also common in most people, including adults, for a small period of time after they have experienced some kind of like severe trauma in their life. Okay, so that this isn't like victim blaming, like, oh, if somebody hurts you, you're probably a bastard. Like, it's not saying that. It's saying that most people, a lot of people, not most, but a lot of people, when they get hurt by another human being, whether it's like, you had your heart broken, you got cheated on, you got gypped out of a really raw business deal, anything horrible that a person can do that would traumatize you or lead to like some, it's very common. I guess we'll pick one example. It's very common when a person is cheated on by a spouse, and both men and women, after something like that has happened, there is a period there where most people will have slightly narcissistic characteristics after they've been cheated on, right? They care, and again, it kind of makes sense. They're usually in so much emotional pain, or they can be in such emotional pain that it's really all they can think about. Their brain really can't focus on anybody else at that moment because they're busy dealing with their own wounds. And that can very much lead to, again, another common one is if a child passes away. That's a situation which it's, again, it's theorized, it's not a fact, but theorized. And at least it's seen to have happened in the past. Like they do have evidence that it does happen. A person loses a child, and the pain that they feel from that is so intense that that's really all they can focus on. If they have other family members, they kind of fall by the wayside for a little bit while they work their way through processing this horrible ordeal. And it even happens, like I said, on much lower, less serious issues, like when you've just gotten cheated on. Somebody who's just been cheated on, a lot of times they will show some sort of narcissistic tendencies afterwards, at least for a brief moment. And then, they heal, wounds heal, time heals all wounds, whatever they say to make you feel better. And then, eventually you grow out of it. So that is kind of interesting to note, though. We're going to go over definition and assessment. And then I got other articles that we can go to for like characteristics and things like that, right? So, definition and assessment. Narcissistic personality disorder is usually diagnosed through clinical evaluation. It is defined by the 5th edition of the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is the DSM, where I think we're on the DSM-5 now, like the 5th version of the DSM. So I actually have a whole stream where we're going to go over the DSM-5. So that's happening. I don't know when, but it's happening at some point. In terms of the personality traits of grandiosity and attention seeking, and in terms of significant impairments in personality functioning, such as looking excessively to others for the regulation of self-esteem, viewing oneself as exceptional, having impaired empathy, and having mostly superficial relationships. Those qualities remain relatively stable over time and are not attributable primarily to a medical condition, the use of drugs, or the individual's developmental stage. See, those are all examples of other things that can cause you to create those types of personality traits that they just listed and not be a narcissist, right? It's just an unfortunate side effect of, well, hey, being on drugs, right? That can definitely make a person seem way more narcissistic, lacking empathy, viewing yourself in an elevated light, that sort of thing. So researchers have also investigated a less extreme form of narcissism that is termed the narcissistic personality type. Such individuals possess most or all of the characteristics of the narcissistic personality disorder, but are considered within the normal range of personality. So it's just not to the point that it's a disorder. If I remember correctly, a disorder, somebody can tell me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but if I remember correctly, a disorder is when it's fucked up your life. Like it's having adverse effects on your life is when it's considered a disorder. So a person who displays either narcissistic personality disorder or the personality type are preoccupied with maintaining excessively positive self-concepts. They become overly concerned with obtaining positive, aggrandizing feedback from others and react with extreme positive or negative emotions when they succeed or fail to receive confirmation that others hold them in high regard. That's a big point of narcissism, right? Is if, you constantly need that validation to the point that it's like, okay, bro, chill. And it's gotten to the point that, if somebody doesn't give you the validation you want, you ask for constructive criticism on something, they say, well, you could probably do a little better with this. And your first thought is to jump down their throat and beat their ass. You might be a narcissist, Narcissists want positive feedback about themselves, and they actively manipulate others to solicit or coerce admiration from them. Accordingly, narcissism is thought to reflect a form of chronic interpersonal self-esteem regulation. The narcissistic personality type is measured through self-report questionnaires such as the NPI, Narcissistic Personality Inventory, the most widely used such scale, which can also be used to assess narcissistic personality disorder. The NPI presents respondents with a set of forced choice items in which they must decide which of the two statements is most descriptive of them. For example, persons completing the NPI would be asked whether they are best described by "people always seem to recognize my authority" or by "being an authority doesn't mean that much to me." People who score high on the NPI have been known to display a wide variety of narcissistic behaviors, such as arrogance, feigned superiority, and aggressiveness. In addition, people with a clinical diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder score higher on the NPI than do people with other psychiatric diagnoses or those in control groups. So there you have it. That's what it is. That's how you get tested for it. We're going to take a step back to what Mr. Todd said earlier. The difference between narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism. That last Britannica there kind of answered the question for us, but we'll read into it a little bit more just so it's driven into your head. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is a complex mental health condition characterized by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. Key criteria in the DSM-5 include an exaggerated sense of self-importance, fantasies of unlimited success, a sense of entitlement, and exploitation of others for personal gain. So, I don't know why, but I also feel like it's kind of important to note there that having, a fantasy of success, right? Like you fantasizing about being successful at something in your life doesn't count as narcissism. I don't know why, but for some reason, narcissist, is a word that gets tossed around on social media non-fucking stop. Everybody says that about their ex, right? If I had a nickel for every single person I've dated who told me my ex is a narcissist, I would probably have a lot of nickels, too many nickels to count. I'm sure that I have a whole list of my own exes who have probably said that about me. And when I was young, I said that about other exes of mine. There's a couple exes there where I'm like, that bitch definitely had an NPD, right? But, it gets tossed around way too much. And a lot of time it gets tossed around because somebody is identifying one specific aspect of a person's personality and saying, well, that's narcissistic. And it's like, well, it might be, it might not be. But, narcissistic personality disorder specifically, you have to have a combination of these factors, right? It isn't one or the other. It isn't. So if you have a fantasy of being successful, that doesn't make you a narcissist. If you're working your ass off to be successful, that doesn't make you a narcissist. That's actually one of the reasons why I dived into reading about narcissism is when I was 26, 27, there was a point where I thought there were some things I was doing that might be narcissistic. And I remember talking to a therapist about it. And that was something that I had to, something that I learned was like, no, dude, like just because you want to be successful in your career, so you're going to go put in extra hours or work your ass off, that doesn't make you a narcissist. If you combine that with the idea that you should automatically be given a promotion and regardless of how you work, combined, that would be that sense of entitlement, right? Combined with an idea of yourself as being amazing regardless of your success level, and which would be that self-importance. And then you're actually stepping on or fucking up your coworkers' lives in an attempt to get higher up on the food chain, that was that last bit, exploitation of others for personal gain, then there's a much stronger case you could be a narcissist, so, right? So now, NPD differs from narcissistic behaviors or the trait of narcissism. While narcissistic traits may be present in many individuals to some degree, NPD involves a more extreme and inflexible pattern of behavior that significantly impairs interpersonal relationships and functioning. Judging from email questions I have received, many readers are somewhat confused about the differences between people who are narcissistic versus those who have NPD. There is a large difference between the two. Let's explore those differences. Okay, so what is NPD? I think we kind of got the gist of it, to be honest. But yeah, let's just read it just a teeny weeny bit more. Well, we don't need to go into all of this nonsense right here because we're not really learning about narcissistic personality disorder. We just want to see the difference between NPD and narcissistic personality, right? So another burp. All right. NPD is a personality disorder and a mental health disorder outlined in the DSM-5. People with NPD often have inflated sense of self-importance and believe they are superior to others. They frequently seek excessive admiration and validation from others while simultaneously lacking empathy and disregarding the feelings and needs of others. So yeah, it's twofold. Again, you're not just think highly of yourself. You think highly of yourself and don't give a shit how you affect other people, right? So again, a lot like a child. A child doesn't really necessarily think high of themselves, but they kind of do, right? They think they're the center of the world because they can't help it, because they don't understand how the world functions, right? So you think of a small child, the way they act, they are the center of the universe, right? So if they don't get that cereal that they wanted when you take them to the grocery store, they hit the ground and start screaming and kicking their feet, and they don't give a flying fuck how it embarrasses you, because they're not capable of understanding what embarrassment even is, or that their actions affect you, that it makes you look like something, that everybody else around you has their own thoughts and they're thinking something about him. We all did that when we were kids. Maybe not stomp our feet in the grocery aisle, but we all did something stupid, not realizing the effects that it had on our parents or how we were seen from other people. A lot of times later on in life, you'll be sleeping in bed one night. You're like almost on the edge of a beautiful sleep. You got this awesome dream coming in. You're fishing on a beach in Barbados. I don't know if they even fish in Barbados, but you're dreaming. And then suddenly you'll just remember this instant where you did this really stupid, ugly, cringe fucking thing when you're a kid. And you wake up instantly and you're like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed with myself. That happens. And that, as you should, but that happens because when you were a kid, you didn't have the ability to conceive that when you were doing this stupid thing, people were going to judge you for it. It didn't pop into your head, right? That is how a narcissistic person is. They don't care that others are judging them. They don't care about other people's needs. It's all about them, right? And that's it. So let's see. Individuals with MPD may display various behavioral and interpersonal traits consistent with the disorder. They may exaggerate their achievements and talents, expecting constant praise and recognition from others. People with NPD often have a sense of entitlement, believing they deserve special treatment and are entitled to privileges that others do not have. They may exploit or manipulate others to achieve their own goals and may become envious or resentful of others' success. And see, so this is also, I'm jumping into my ramblings right away, but we're going to go ahead and do it. The reason, on one hand, you're constantly hearing people describe other people as narcissistic. It's like out of control. The amount of people who claim their girlfriend, their sister, their mom, their older brother, second cousin, twice removed, pet fucking hamster are all narcissists, right? They all have narcissistic personality disorder. But on the other hand, there is an increase in narcissistic personality disorder. And I didn't even think about it till just now. There was a really good Joe Rogan episode where they had a psychologist come on who had written an entire book about this, who had spent years of his life studying the increases in narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism from generation to generation to generation. And most especially what it correlates very closely with is the rise of social media, right? A lot of these things that we're talking about here, you can see a lot of it on social media, right? You can see people, with a sense of entitlement, believing they deserve special treatment. Oh my God, that's constant on social media. The people attempting to manipulate others to achieve their goals. And, you definitely see a lot of people becoming envious or resentful of others. It's sort of almost become a cultural thing, right? I tell people, not all the time, but I tell people when the time comes or when the time arises, that there is this culture nowadays, this idea of pointing at whoever, really, groups of people, but eventually everybody gets pointed at, saying, oh, you have privilege of some kind, and there's a half a dozen privileges out there that people argue and bitch and piss and moan about. And this is to me, I'm like, this is such a toxic fucking way to think. It just, not even necessarily that you're ruining the world around you. It's just you are infecting yourself so much with so much negativity that's unnecessary. I think last time this brought up, I was talking to, I think my little brother actually, about like pretty girls. And, somebody had brought up the idea of pretty privilege. And that's such a nasty, mean thing to say. Like we can, argue, and I actually think I have this in a past stream, the idea that pretty people, and I have seen a study, I don't know how many more studies they've done or if they disprove that study, because again, it was a long time ago, back when I was in therapy, but I did see a study. Okay, I didn't know this rant was going to take so long. I'm running over to my RAM screen. There you go. So check out beard looking better. Okay, all right. So I forgot where I was now. I got distracted by my beard. Okay, yeah, that's right. So I have seen a study, at least, or a couple studies, I think it was. They were slightly different, but one study I know for sure was, it did find that, yeah, if you're a pretty woman or a handsome man, if you're pretty or handsome, you're going to get slightly different treatment than non-pretty or handsome people who are just average, or especially people who would be considered classically ugly. Like that is true. That's a thing, but it's a blessing. right? If you are a pretty girl out there, my mustache just doesn't want to play ball today. All right, sorry. So if you're a pretty girl or a handsome guy, you were born with an awesome blessing in life, bro, girl, whoever. So you should go out and use that to the best of your advantage. You should go out there and use that blessing, not in a negative way. Don't, manipulate people with your looks, but you can go out there and use your looks to get job opportunities. That is a thing. That study did confirm that, pretty people, handsome people do in fact get it is easier for them to get job opportunities because people do want to be around. People want to hire the pretty girl and the handsome man more than they do everybody else. You can go out and you have much more opportunity to go out and find a good partner, okay? Because you can now create a larger pool of partners because you're handsome or you're pretty, whatever it is. Um, and that's awesome. You should go out and you should do those things as long as you're doing them responsibly and safely and not hurting yourself or other people in the process. You should really go use your blessings to go do that. But when people come at you with this pretty privilege, you fucking stupid bitch, it isn't coming from a place of they give a fuck about you. It isn't coming from a place of they want to make the world a better place. It's exclusively coming from a place of jealousy. And that type of behavior by itself is just bad behavior. But when you combine that with the idea of wanting special treatment, there it is, wanting special treatment, having a sense of entitlement, and becoming envious or resentful of others, now you're talking about narcissistic personality. So on one hand, everybody's bitching about narcissists, and on the other hand, there's probably a reason for it. Narcissism is growing and increasing in this country, and social media does have a lot to do with that, or theoretically might have a lot to do with that. Okay, NPD can significantly impact an individual's relationships, work, and overall functioning. While some people with NPD may appear confident and successful on the surface, their interpersonal relationships are often superficial and marked by difficulties. They may struggle to maintain meaningful connections with others due to their lack of empathy and inability to consider the perspective of others. Despite their outward appearance of confidence, individuals with NPD may experience deep-seated feelings of insecurity and vulnerability. Remember, I told you about the vulnerable narcissism, which they often mask with grandiosity and arrogance. Many people do you know who are doing that, right? You know what I'm saying? How many tiny wieners are out there driving in giant lifted trucks right now? You see what I mean? These are people who do not function well. They alienate friends and family and come to feel socially isolated and depressed. This is very difficult for them because they do not want to think anything is wrong. People with NPD are caught between thinking they are superior and feeling miserable all at the same time. And that's a bummer. That sounds like it sucks. And the thing about being a narcissist is when you're that much of an asshole, nobody gives a shit if you feel bad, so they really are stuck in a rock and a hard place. 14 signs of a narcissist, right? So here's 14 signs that your best friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your neighbor's poodle might be a narcissist. All right, so keep your ears open, check for this. After I give you these 14, you'll be an expert at spotting this shit. Okay, 1, fantasies of greatness. Again, by itself, I don't think that's pretty narcissistic, or I don't think that's equivalent to being a narcissist just because you have fantasies of greatness. But you kind of combine it with 13 other signs and now you have a case. But narcissists are often obsessed with fantasies of greatness. They might daydream about being the most successful, powerful, or attractive person in the world, and these fantasies drive their behavior and their decisions. This preoccupation can result in a lack of focus on real-world tasks and relationships, leading to disappointment, frustration when reality doesn't match their fantasies. So I think that's an important note to make. There is a difference between fantasizing about being great and working hard towards it and knowing where you're at in the world right now, and fantasizing about being great to the point that you think you actually are great and not working towards anything, right? Because you're just stuck in that fantasy, right? I guess there's a big difference there. 2, belief that they are special and unique. Again, by itself, it's like, we're all a bunch of like special fucking, butterflies and snowflakes and whatever, but, it's cool if you feel like you're special and unique. But, it's a little more intense and you combine it with other things. Anyway, narcissists believe they are special and can only be understood by other special or high status people. This belief can lead them to associate only with people they perceive to be equally special or higher in status. This can create an elitist attitude, making it difficult for them to form genuine connections with a diverse range of people. It can also lead to feelings of isolation. 3, a need for excessive admiration. We kind of went over that one. That's kind of self-explanatory. 4, a sense of entitlement. We've all certainly Heard somebody who's been there, right? Narcissists often have an unreasonable expectation of favorable treatment and automatic compliance with their wishes. They believe they deserve special treatment and are baffled or angry when they don't receive it. This sense of entitlement can lead to unreasonable demands and expectations in personal and professional relationships, causing tension and resentment. 5. Interpersonally exploitive behavior. Exploitative. Narcissists often take advantage of others to achieve their own ends. They might use manipulation, deceit, or coercion to get what they want. This exploitative behavior can result in significant emotional and psychological harm to others, leading to broken trust and damaged relationships. What a bummer. Lack of empathy, pretty self explanatory. 7. Envy of others or belief that others are envious of them. Narcissists often feel envious of others' success and possessions, believing that they deserve these things more. Conversely, they may also believe that others are envious of them. This envy can lead to feelings of bitterness and resentment, damaging relationships and fostering a competitive rather than collaborative environment. So I don't think, again, there's a huge difference between being competitive with a person and being, envious of their position, and there's even a greater difference between being like envious or jealous of something somebody has and then acting upon that envy or jealousy. You know what I'm saying? So that also is a important note to make. 8. Arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. Narcissists often display arrogant and haughty behaviors, looking down on others and treating them with contempt. This attitude can alienate those around them and create a hostile environment, whether at home, work, or in social settings. 9. Difficulty handling criticism. Pretty self explanatory. Superficial relationships. That's number 10. Narcissists often form shallow relationships based on what others can do for them rather than genuine connection or mutual respect. These superficial relationships can leave both parties feeling unfulfilled and used, leading to loneliness and isolation. 11. Lack of accountability. Narcissists rarely take responsibility for their actions. Instead, they often blame others for their problems and failures. This lack of accountability can lead to unresolved conflicts and repeated negative patterns in relationships and work situations. 12. Manipulative behavior. Narcissists are skilled manipulators. They often use tactics such as gaslighting, guilt tripping, and playing the victim to control others and get what they want. Manipulative behavior can cause significant psychological harm, leading to confusion, self-doubt, and anxiety in those who are on the receiving end. Obsession with status and appearance. Narcissists are often preoccupied with their status and appearance. They seek out material possessions, titles, and associations that enhance their image. This obsession can lead to superficial values and priorities, resulting in neglect of deeper, more meaningful aspects of life and relationships. And 14, inability to maintain healthy relationships. Due to their self-centeredness and lack of empathy, narcissists struggle to maintain healthy, long-term relationships. They may cycle through friends, partners, and colleagues, leaving a trail of broken relationships in their wake. This inability to maintain healthy relationships can result in a pattern of loneliness, instability, and repeated emotional trauma for both the narcissist and those they interact with. So, needless to say, life isn't good for the narcissist. It's a real bummer being a narcissist, right? So that covers narcissism. You guys should have a pretty good understanding of that now. We'll go over origins a little later in the stream, but now we're going to jump into Machiavellianism, right? So let's go back to our handy dandy little chart here. God, what the fuck is that chart called? It's going to kill. Venn diagram. It is a fucking Venn diagram, you motherfuckers. That's what it is. Holy fuckballs. I can't believe that it took me this long to figure it out. God, it was going to kill me. Venn diagram. Wow, I'm so happy for myself. Whew, geesh, I was bothering me so much. Okay. Anyways, Machiavellianism on the Venn diagram. Some characteristics. Reputation. I don't know entirely what that means. Maybe like they have I think that means, well, based off what I know about Machiavellianism, it's like now I can't remember this fucking word I'm looking for. You are, obsessed, like an obsession with reputation. Oof, geesh. I need to quit smoking weed or whatever it is I'm doing. Cynicism, strategic calculation, tactics, orientation towards the future. Again, that one's kind of an odd one. I don't think that's a bad. I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Low ethical and moral standards. Oh, well, that one's a pretty bad thing. Strategy. Is that the second time we've seen strategy? No. Strategy, tactics, strategic calculation. I mean, those are kind of almost the same thing. Absence of principles, amorality, and flexibility. Again, flexibility is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, especially if it's like flexibility in your girlfriend. That's a really good thing then. Just joking. It is interesting here in the Venn diagram. The whole point of the Venn diagram is to show how multiple objects are distinct in themselves and then the characteristics that they share with one another. In this little area right here, we see narcissists and Machiavellianists, I think that's the word, share the capacity to influence and convince, particularly like manipulate. You know, they all three share the ability to, they all three share disagreeableness, callousness, dishonesty, and manipulation. That's the commonality between these three personality traits. But between Machiavellianism and narcissism, it's capacity to influence and convince other people. Right. So Machiavellianism, you'll understand why a lot of this is strategy based. They brought that term twice: strategic calculation and strategy, tactics. Right. There's a reason that that's put in here, as well as we see low ethical and moral standards and amorality. Um, you'll see why all of that's in here right now. So, Machiavellianism, the political theory of the Italian statesman and writer Niccolo Machiavelli, as presented in his best known work, The Prince. So, The Prince is actually one of my favorite books. That is such a crazy book. Hold on, wait a second. Okay, oof, yeah, I was going to say, oh shit, this just gave me an article on Machiavellianism. So, yes, Machiavellianism isn't just a dark triad personality. It is actually a quote unquote political theory that was presented by Niccolo Machiavelli in his book, The Prince. The Prince is a really awesome book. It's just, if you enjoy history, particularly like the bloody aspects of history, right? Because there's some fucked up history, man. People in history did some fucked up shit to each other. And in this book, they do a lot of fucked up shit to each other. If you really enjoy history, especially of warring Italy, then you definitely want to check out The Prince. In that book, Niccolo Machiavelli was a politician in France. I think Florence. I don't quite remember, but he studied the kings and queens and princes that he worked for, that he worked with, and how they navigated the political battlefield, as it works. It was a fucking battlefield. These fuckers were assassinating each other like every other weekend, and he took his what he observed and the more successful of those, and the big massive failures of those who were massive failures in the realm of politics, meaning those that usually got assassinated, and devised the idea of how you should game this particular political system. This is his political theory on how to be the best politician you can be. And it comes with a lot of history in there that is super duper crazy. So, anyways, good book. I highly recommend. The term Machiavellianism is also used more generally to characterize the view that politics is immoral and that ordinarily unscrupulous actions involving deceit, treachery, and violence are thus permissible as effective means of acquiring and maintaining political power. So Machiavellianism is definitely a means to an end, or the ends justifies the means kind of a mentality, right? It is a whatever you got to do to achieve power sort of deal, stepping on others. Again, strategy. That's where the strategy and tactics come in, right? Is the political nature of this, right? But treachery, violence, manipulation, all well usable, all in the tool belt, all in the Swiss Army knife, right? In a related sense, Machiavellianism or Machiavellian signifies egregiously immoral behavior that serves one person or group's self-interest rather than the greater good of a community or country. In psychology and personality theory, Machiavellianism refers to one element of the so-called dark triad of related negative personality traits, the other two being narcissism and psychopathy. Like the other traits of the dark triad, Machiavellianism is marked by emotional coldness, duplicity, and aggressiveness. Typical Machiavellian behaviors and characteristics include the callous manipulation of others for personal gain, the use of other immoral tactics in the pursuit of power within an organization or community, inordinate distrust of others, a desire for revenge in response to others' perceived wrongful behaviors, and insincere displays of charm and charisma in brief social interactions. Machiavellians lack effective empathy or the vicarious experience of others' feelings or emotions, but they are capable of high levels of cognitive empathy or the ability to understand another person's mental state. They often use that understanding to manipulate others for their own advantage. So narcissists don't know or have a hard time understanding how you feel. Machiavellians understand how you feel, they just don't care. Okay. Although Machiavellianism is an element of the Dark Triad, it is not considered a mental disorder in itself, unlike narcissism and psychopathy. All right. So, Machiavellian traits. We already kind of went through a bit of a list. We already know where it came from. The concept of Machiavellianism was first introduced during the Renaissance period by Niccolo Machiavelli, an Italian diplomat and political strategist. In his book, The Prince, Machiavelli posits that rulers who are brutal in their quest for power and glory are more likely to survive, succeed, and pass their genes onto future generations than those who are honest or moral. Machiavellianism became a term to describe behavior where a person will do anything to get ahead, believing that the end result justifies the means. Ooh, boom. You see what I see that? I didn't even read that before we did this, you know? See, I just knew what they were going to say. I read The Prince like I my first copy of The Prince, I still have it, and it's just like the whole spine is torn and everything. It was such a really good book. So yeah, there's a famous quote that kind of from there's tons of famous quotes from Machiavelli's book, but one of the more infamous, I suppose you could say, is if you had to choose between the two, whether it is better to be loved or feared as a leader, if you had to choose between, if you couldn't have both, then it is better to be feared. That is, you know, a position that he took, his philosophy on whether or not it's better to be loved or feared. If you can't choose both, then it's better to be feared. Which kind of exemplifies how that book is, right? Anyways, someone with Machiavellian personality may display the following traits, all right? So keep your eyes peeled. Check out that neighbor Bob. Check out neighbor Bob's dog. Focusing on only their own goals and interests. Yeah, that totally sounds like Bob. Prioritizing success, power, money, and fame above all else. Manipulating or exploiting others for their own gain. Having no qualms about deceiving or lying to others. Being charming and using flattery to their advantage. You know, as we're going through this, I do want to note, unlike narcissism, where you could see a couple of these things and be like, well, it's not so bad, that one thing by itself, right? Like self, you know, improvement or whatever. A lot of these by themselves are still bad things, right? Focusing on only your own goals and interests. I guess that is kind of like what we're talking about with narcissism. But prioritizing success, power, money, and fame above all else, that's usually kind of a bad thing. At least bad in the sense that you wouldn't want to like be dating a person that did that, right? You know what I mean? Because you're clearly going to be low on the totem pole. You know, manipulating people, using charm and flattery to get what you want out of people, believing the end result justifies the means. Having a cynical view of human nature, that definitely works hand in hand. A lot of those black pillars out there, you know, Machiavelli was very, very black pilled. You know, all y'all Generation Zers and all of us millennials think we're so smart with all our new things. Black pill has been a thing since Machiavelli was around, right? They just didn't call it that, but Machiavelli was like the OG black pillar, right? So having a negative attitude toward everything, well, that's kind of cynicism, right? Kind of cynical. Believing themselves to be superior to others, not being able to empathize with others. I think that's more on the idea that's more on the totem pole of narcissism. So is believing in superiority to others, too. Having difficulty trusting other people, being disconnected from their own emotions, struggling to identify and express their own feelings. I think those two things more align with psychopathy, to be honest. Staying aloof and lacking genuine warmth in social interactions, that's definitely Machiavellian. Avoiding emotional attachments with others. Being able to read people in social situations and using this insight into their advantage. So, if you're wondering if someone is Machiavellian, there is a test that can be determined whether or not they are. The Mach 4 test. A scale known as the Mach 4 test is used to assess whether or not someone has Machiavellian personality traits. The test has a list of 20 statements, and participants have to give each statement a ranking from 1 completely agree to 7, or 1 completely disagree to 7 completely agree. Half of the statements on the test demonstrate Machiavellian attitudes, such as the best way to handle people is to tell them what they want to hear, or anyone who completely trusts anyone else is asking for trouble. The other 10 statements convey anti Machiavellian attitudes, such as one should take action only when one is sure it is morally right. Possible test results. High Machs. People who score above 60 points on the test are considered high Machs as they demonstrate Machiavellian personality traits, and of course low Machs, people who score below 60 points. A separate scale known as the Kitty Mach has also been developed to assess Machiavellianism in children. The Kitty Mach, well, that's kind of cute. So let's see, this is more about the Dark Triad. the difference between Machiavellianism and narcissism. Machiavellianism and narcissism are both a part of the Dark Triad and often go hand in hand, as they have several common characteristics, including a marked disregard for others. However, they are not exactly the same thing. Machiavellianism is more focused on manipulating others to achieve one's goals, whereas narcissism is more focused on seeking attention and admiration for oneself. All right, so how to deal with Machiavellian traits? I'll link this and you can read that on your own. I actually got a little video that I wanted to play for you guys. This is from Psych to Go. I kind of throw this channel up occasionally whenever I'm doing the psychology stuff, just because it has really fun and usually cute animations, and I enjoy watching it. So I figured you all will too. So let me just throw that on, put on the captions for all of you deaf people like myself, and yeah, go ahead and take a listen.
Friend or peer, what's the first thought that comes to mind? Is it someone who gossips frequently? Maybe someone who's bossy and a nightmare to work with? Well, what about Machiavellianism? Machiavellianism refers to a personality trait that is characterized by an ability to be extremely manipulative, deceitful, and cunning as a means to achieve one's goals, such as power and status. And it's one of the three tenets of the Dark Triad, which includes narcissism and psychopathy. Individuals with a Machiavellian personality profile can be incredibly manipulative. Put it this way, if someone with the Machiavellian trait was a soul reaper, manipulation is their Zampakuto. As a matter of fact, there are
I like the references to anime, and I like anime drawings. And I don't know why, but I like these people with little leaves on their heads. I don't know what the point of that is, but it's kind of cool. This person, whoever does the animation, definitely has their own style. So this is a good channel. You got to check it out. I think here the channel, yeah, 12 million subscribers. Wow, balls. Oof. Gosh, I wish I was there. I bet they're making some money. But yeah, go check them out though, because they do have some interesting videos.
many clear-cut examples of this type of personality in movies and television, such as Frank Underwood from House of Cards, the ambitious and conniving politician who stops at nothing to achieve his goals and further his political career. And who can forget Walter White from the show Breaking Bad, the embattled anti-hero and drug kingpin who ruthlessly destroys anyone who gets in his way.
Funny note, gonna give it to you guys. Gonna throw a little bit of a tiny rant out there. My dad looks just like Walter White. Not this cartoon of Walter White, but the actual Walter White looks very similar to him. Not just like, I guess, but my dad's last name is White, Mr. White. Okay, he's bald. He has the same facial haircut. He's had it my whole life. He's been bald my whole life, has the same facial haircut. He wears those same plaid button-up shirts that Walter White has. He wears glasses. He wears the same fucking loafers. And he went to college for chemistry. So, oh, and he has cancer. So my dad has leukemia. Walter White had lung cancer. So how fucking crazy is that? I watch that show, and every time Walter comes on, I'm like, Father? Oh, my dad was a sweetheart, though. I just want to point that out there before we continue. My dad would be the opposite of Walter White. He doesn't make meth, last I checked.
Sounds kind of scary, right? Well, although these are extreme examples, Machiavellian individuals definitely exist and they can make any setting toxic. These 4 signs can help you figure out if you have a peer or friend with the Machiavellian quality. Let's dive right into the signs. Number 1, excessive gossip. Have you ever met someone who seems to beam with joy when speaking negatively about others? Gossip is a predictable and inevitable aspect of life, and it's not abnormal for someone to gossip occasionally. However, gossiping becomes very dangerous and toxic when taken to the extreme, such as starting vicious rumors and using others to obtain personal information that could be damaging to their reputation. Individuals with the Machiavellian trait tend to weaponize any information that comes their way and have a talent for manipulating harmless statements into something that conveniently fits their narrative. So, be extremely careful and tread with caution when saying anything to them. Number 2, highly competitive. Possessing a strong sense of ambition is generally something positive and admirable, which it is. There's nothing.
That's, again, kind of interesting. I mean, this is something you see in a lot of different personality disorders. Is it's regular personality characteristics that are dialed up to 11, right? So your narcissism is an extreme uh, uh, view of yourself, right? Like you spend a lot of time focused on yourself, an extreme focus on yourself. And if you're the kind of person that's like going through a personal growth phase in your life, that's pretty common. That's pretty normal. Focusing on yourself is not a bad thing. Like everybody tells you as a burp. I don't think I caught that burp. That was a burp too. That came out of nowhere. That was like a tremor burp and a hiccup. It was just freak out of nowhere. Anyways, it is common, for people, like they tell you, put your own gas mask on before you put on someone else's, right? It's not a crime to think about yourself. But when you took and dial it up to 11, that's narcissism. And Machiavellianism is it's very equivalent to the a personality trait of just being highly competitive in general. Being highly competitive, being highly ambitious, like they said, are very admirable traits to have. But you dial them up to 11, and now you have Niccolo Machiavelli here trying to assassinate his best friends.
Nothing wrong with being competitive. However, when a person is so competitive that they're willing to compromise their own values and hurt other people to achieve their goals, that's when it becomes toxic. According to Professor Mariana Bakarova, PhD, people who would score highly when being tested for Machiavellianism, for instance, are very motivated by money, power, and competition, and winning, and less so on community building. So you can see why bullying would come easily for Machiavellians. Coercion and intimidation are just a few of the tactics that Machiavellian individuals use to gain leverage, whether it's in school, the workplace, or in social situations. So if you're seeing an almost ruthless competitive streak in one of your friends, peers, or acquaintances, this could be a sign of Machiavellianism. Number 3, insincere flattery. Another prevalent behavior of a Machiavellian individual is the use of insincere and excessive flattery, especially to those in positions of power and influence. Take it from the Queen Bee herself, Regina George. She uses the, "Oh my God, where did you get that? It's so cute" line, then turns around and bashes that same thing she just complimented. Flatterers can appear to be very charming and friendly, but if the Machiavellian trait is present, then that flattery can come with an ulterior motive. Social psychologists and authors of studies in Machiavellianism, Richard Christie and Florence Gaze, emphasize the fact that Machiavellians tend to use their relationships for personal gain. Instead of a deep, meaningful friendship, they form weak, superficial bonds with others. This way, it's easier to pick up and put down the friendship when needed. If you notice your friend or acquaintance is constantly showering a person of power or influence, such as a teacher, a boss, or even a celebrity, with gifts and compliments, but then proceeds to treat everyone else poorly, this could be a sign of a Machiavellian trait. And number 4, manipulation. This component is central to a Machiavellian's cold and calculated nature and can manifest in several different ways. Some examples of their manipulative tactics include trying to generate sympathy from others through deceit, turning others against someone else, or even gaslighting. Protecting ourselves from being manipulated by these types of individuals is vital. And according to licensed psychologist Diane Grant, PhD, there are several ways you can avoid falling prey to Machiavellians, such as setting boundaries, building supportive relationships, and avoiding trusting them with any vulnerabilities. So, do you have a Machiavellian person in your life? How are you dealing with the situation? Let us know in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Psych2Go for more content. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in our next video.
Stop researching.
All right. There you go. So that's Psych2Go, everybody. 4 signs of a Machiavellian person. I'll link this video down in the subscription. They got a whole bunch of videos. They've been going for a while, so really good channel. So anyways, now you guys should have a pretty good idea of what Machiavellianism and narcissism is, right? So you guys are just damn near experts on this. Might as well just go get your fucking psychology degree. So we're going to go ahead and jump to psychopathy then. And yes, that is how you pronounce that word. For those of you that don't know, for a long time, I used to call it psychopathy until I was talking to somebody smarter than me and I said it and they're like, yeah, psychopathy. And I was like, this fucking idiot doesn't know. And then I went and looked it up and had the computer pronounce it for me. And it turns out that idiot knew. So it's psychopathy, not psychopathy. Traits of psychopathy are charm and superficial enchantment. That kind of sounds familiar, right? That's kind of Machiavellian, right? Impulsivity, that's a very important. You'll see that one repeatedly through this list. Vulnerability, absence of guilt and remorse, search for emotions. See, that's what I was kind of saying earlier. The inability to know how they're feeling is usually more of psychopathy than it is Machiavellianism. Intelligence, risk taking. That's kind of with that impulsivity, right? Low empathy, irresponsibility, aggressivity. I didn't know aggressivity was a word. I thought it was aggressiveness is also a part of narcissism, right? Lack of a conscience. So you see lack of conscience, absence of guilt and remorse, right? Orientation towards the present, which is kind of interesting because the opposite of that, orientation towards the future, is more Machiavellian, right? Imprudence and anti-sociability. Imprudence kind of goes with, I thought, yeah, irresponsibility was on there. So you see lack of responsibility, lack of emotions, lack of empathy, and an impulsivity, right? What they share in common with Machiavellianism is lying and deceiving opportunism, right? So that's kind of something that they share together. And then what psychopathy actually shares with narcissism is selfishness, self promotion, and self esteem issues. All right. So there you have it. Our Dark Triad is complete as far as this is concerned. Let's go over back to Britannica and see what they have to say about psychopathy. Okay. Psychopathy, personality disorder, character, a person, yeah, they're forgetting like an A. Psychopathy is a personality disorder characterized by a set of dysfunctional, interpersonal, emotional, lifestyle, and antisocial tendencies. Persons suffering from psychopathy, usually called psychopaths, commonly exhibit a lack of empathy or remorse and manifest impulsiveness, manipulativeness, and deceitfulness, among other negative traits and behaviors. In addition, psychopathy leads some persons to commit criminal offenses. In psychology and personality theory, psychopathy refers to one element of the so-called Dark Triad, yada yada yada, studies of psychopathy. There is a long history of interest in the combination of personality traits and behaviors thought to indicate psychopathy. Psychologists frequently refer to the mask of sanity, an attempt to reinterpret the so-called psychopathic personality written in 1941 by the American psychiatrist Hervey M. Cleckley as an early and careful description of the disorder. Early editions of the diagnosis, the DSM-5, a publication of the American Psychiatric Association, use the terms psychopathic personality disturbance, antisocial personality, and antisocial personality disorder to classify traits and behaviors associated with psychopathy. So that's why Dr. Todd, at the beginning of this whole stream, mentions the psychopathy, narcissism, as far as the personality trait, is not the same thing as narcissistic personality disorder or NPD. Psychopathy is not the same thing as far as the personality trait goes, not the same thing as antisocial personality disorder. But when it's turned up to 11, when it becomes clinical, then it becomes antisocial personality disorder, right? So, the fifth edition of the manual, the DSM-5, identified psychopathy as a specific form of antisocial personality disorder, but did not list psychopathy itself as a clinical diagnosis. That approach reflects a lack of consensus on the definition of psychopathy, including its boundaries and features. Excuse me. Got a hairball. All right, so let's see. As further manifested, let's read that again. That approach reflects a lack of consensus on the definition of psychopathy, including its boundaries and features, as further manifested by the proliferation of competing methodologies for assessing, diagnosing, and treating the disorder. Indeed, psychologists have developed a variety of checklists that clearly define psychopathy for use in clinical, research, and criminal justice settings. Experts in many fields are motivated to pursue research on psychopathy because it is a major public health problem. One study published in 2011 estimated the social cost of criminal psychopathic behavior in the United States, including the cost of property damage and related expenditures for police, courts, prisons, and so on, at $460 billion per year in 2009 dollars. Such costs do not include those associated with health care for victims of psychopathic criminals. And we are going to dive into characteristics here in a minute. Excuse me, hold on. And origin and development, we got that for the end of the stream. But let's look at treatment. Psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, those of you who watch my channel, which it's like I think we're all the way up to a grand total of about 5 of you smart motherfuckers, right? Know what that is, right? So those of you who might be watching this for the first time, go back and check out my very first video I ever recorded called "What is Cognitive Behavioral Therapy," and you will be smart too. Uh, Psychotherapy, such as CBT, is often used to treat adults suffering from psychopathy. However, many psychologists consider the disorder to be extremely resistant to treatment. The current consensus is that the best way to treat it is to identify psychopathic tendencies in childhood, at which point intervention may be able to mitigate those tendencies and thus prevent psychopathic behaviors later in life. Okay, so now we know a little bit of psychopathy. It is important, like I said earlier, to note the difference between psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder. And we are going to do that here in a split second. I actually got to go get a glass because I need some fucking water. I'm like choking. I don't know if I like sucked up a big giant hunk of my beard. I like feel like I got hair in my throat, like a big old fucking hairball. I could just licked a cat. So, and I don't have a cat, so that's not what happened. So, I'm going to throw you on the be right back screen for like 2 seconds while I go grab a glass and fill it with some water so I'm not choking for the rest of the stream. Okay. So stay tuned. Okay. And testing. Yep, we're back. All right. So, where were we? The difference between psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder. Hmm. Oh. Oh, I needed that. Just dying over here. Okay. Living with psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder can be incredibly difficult, both for the person afflicted and their loved ones. While some individuals may be able to manage the symptoms on their own, most need professional help to effectively address the underlying issues and develop better coping mechanisms. Getting help can be a daunting task, but there are resources available to those seeking assistance. Here are some numbers for all you psychos out there to call. So, we already know what psychopathy is. We kind of want to know what antisocial personality disorder is, right? Because we'll read a little bit more on psychopathy a little bit here in a second. So, what is antisocial personality disorder? An antisocial personality disorder is a mental illness characterized by a pattern of disregarding or violating the rights of others. People with this disorder may not conform to social norms and may display impulsive, aggressive behavior. They often lack empathy, have difficulty maintaining relationships, and may be prone to criminal activity. Symptoms can include a lack of guilt or remorse for one's actions, a disregard for societal rules, impulsivity, and substance abuse. Treatment typically involves counseling or psychotherapy to help the person recognize their behavior and learn how to interact with others in more meaningful ways. Medication may also be prescribed to help manage symptoms such as anger or depression. With proper treatment, some people with antisocial personality disorder can learn to manage their symptoms and lead healthier lives. It is important to note that not all people with antisocial behavior have this disorder. Some may be engaging in criminal activities without having any kind of mental illness. The most effective way to diagnose this disorder is through psychological evaluation. Diagnosis of this disorder is complex and should be done by experienced mental health professionals who can distinguish between different types of personality disorders. Right, so the difference between psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder. The APA, American Psychiatric Association's definition of antisocial personality disorder is found in the DSM-5, which most U.S. mental health professionals use when diagnosing mental health related conditions. In many respects, the symptoms found in people diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, APD, mirror the symptoms commonly associated with psychopathy. For instance, people with the disorder typically do such things as disregard the welfare of others, display superficial charm in social situations, display a lack of guilt or regret. They break the law, behave irresponsibly, manipulate or lie to others, act impulsively, seek stimulation through reckless activity, maintain an inflated sense of self-importance. However, the definition of APD also differs from the definition of psychopathy in important ways. First, an adult who receives a diagnosis of APD must have an earlier history of another mental health condition called conduct disorder. The DSM-5 doesn't allow doctors to diagnose any personality disorder in children, and in many ways, conduct disorder functions as the childhood equivalent of antisocial personality disorder. In addition, a person diagnosed with APD must experience their symptoms outside of the context of mania or schizophrenia. Interesting. Okay, so wow, I didn't realize that was difference. Essentially, the difference is just you had to show signs in early childhood and outside of having another personality disorder. But that's essentially the main difference, right? It doesn't even seem like it's turned up as much, or at least not according to promises.com. I don't know what this behavioral health. Okay. Well, we're going to trust them. Yeah, according to them, the only difference between APD and psychopathy is that you have to have a conduct. People can't be diagnosed with APD unless they had a conduct, what was it called? A conduct disorder when they were a child. Interesting. Okay, so we're going to move on to 20 signs of a psychopath, traits and characteristics. Okay, free worksheets for navigating challenging relationships. Hold on. All those gross body sounds, man. Okay, what is a psychopath? I think we already know, but we'll wing it. We'll throw it again. I'm doing really good on time, so. The term psychopath connotes a vivid image of a person who lacks empathy and is likely to engage in aggressive or violent behavior towards others. Psychopathy is not a clinical diagnosis, but does share many traits with APD, a serious and chronic personality disorder. It has been hypothesized that psychopathy is an extreme version of APD, but there are differences in their presentation. Sociopaths and psychopaths both lack empathy and concern for others, but psychopaths are more likely to engage in violence without thoughts about its consequences or the harm it brings to others. So that's interesting. So choosingtherapy.com says that some people hypothesize that psychopathy is actually APD dialed up to 11, which is kind of crazy. That's the opposite with narcissistic personality disorder. Psychopaths often engage in criminal, cruel, or socially irresponsible behavior, including lying, stealing, or being violent or abusive towards others. Psychopaths have no empathy for a person's needs or rights, so they also feel no remorse, even when their actions harms others. So there you have it. That's a psychopath. Here's 20 signs of a psychopath. superficial charm and charisma. It kind of sounds like all three of them kind of have that, right? Psychopaths can be very charming, charismatic, and persuasive people. This can be especially so with female psychopaths, who are more social and emotional than their male counterparts. While they lack true empathy, they are often very skilled at faking pro-social behaviors like flattery, kindness, and false sympathy. Unnecessarily cruel or mean streak. Once the superficial charm and charisma wears off, a psychopath will often demonstrate moments of cruelty or meanness. These may include gossip, biting comments. Oh, that was that, Machiavellianism, lashing out aggressively at others, or being entertained when they hurt or embarrass someone. Cruelty and meanness are hallmark signs of a psychopath and typically lead to a pattern of violating the rights of others. 3. Lies, exaggerations, and dishonesty. Think there was 20 of them, right? Yeah, we're not going to go through each one at a time, but lies, exaggerations, and dishonesty, a lack of accountability and playing the blame game. That was, again, lack of accountability, narcissism displayed a lack of accountability, uh, need for power, control, and dominance. See, that kind of felt like more of a Machiavellian trait, right? Many psychopaths seek out positions of power and authority because they enjoy dominion and control over other people. According to research, psychopaths may search for and secure positions of leadership in the corporate world, suggesting there is a grain of truth in the stereotype of the psychopathic CEO. There is also known overlap between psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism, immoral and exploitative tendencies, which can lead to this hunger for control. Okay, there you go. Sadistic enjoyment of pain and suffering. Sadism is a word that describes a sick sense of pleasure from the pain and suffering of others. For some psychopathic people, the pain of others is sexually arousing. Oh, that's odd. On the other hand, pleasure is non-sexual and has more to do with excitement, power, or the rush of experience. Not all psychopaths are sadistic, but this quality is not an uncommon trait in psychopaths, which may explain why psychopathic traits predict violent and sexually violent crimes with 80% accuracy. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Okay, boredom and thrill-seeking behaviors. Again, boredom and thrill-seeking on its own. Being sexually violent on its own is pretty fucking bad. But boredom and thrill-seeking, that's not bad by itself. But because psychopaths lack some of the normal emotional wirings that most individuals have, it takes a lot more to excite them, make them happy, or thrill them. Psychopaths are overall less impulsive than sociopaths because they aren't driven by strong emotions, but their dulled emotional response may cause them to seek out thrills. This may be why psychopaths are more likely to engage in crime, violence, sexual promiscuity, and drug or alcohol usage. 8. Disregard for rules, laws, and norms. 9. Unaffected and unafraid of consequences. I think that goes hand in hand with disregard for rules, right? Detached, cold, and callous demeanor. Psychopaths often display a cold, callous, and apathetic demeanor. The differences in the structure of their brains are believed to limit their ability to experience a normal range of human emotions, making them less likely to experience strong feelings. In situations when others are sad, upset, anxious, or excited, a psychopath may seem oddly detached or apathetic. 11. A history of childhood behavior problems. And APD can be diagnosed only after the age of 18, but the signs and symptoms of APD usually begin in childhood or early adolescence. Most psychopaths show signs of conduct disorder before the age of 15, and the most severe psychopaths may be able to trace their behavioral issues to before the age of 10. Some common signs of a psychopath in childhood include frequent fights, lying, stealing, cruelty to animals or other children, and a disregard for rules or authority. 12. A trail of short, broken relationships. Well, yeah, because they sound like dickheads, so that explains that. Exploitation of others for personal gain. Again, that kind of sounds a little bit more on the Machiavellian side, right? 14. Calculated and strategic planning. See, that doesn't seem to go hand in hand with the psychopathy, right? Strategic planning and also being impulsive doesn't seem to really go hand in hand. While sociopaths are driven by emotions, a psychopath is cool-headed and calculated in their decision-making. This can make them more dangerous as it is not as easy to predict what they will do or when they will make their move. Some psychopaths devise detailed plans on how to con, exploit, or take advantage of people who are naturally generous. While psychopaths are not generally patient individuals, they are typically less impulsive than sociopaths. All right. 15, a lack of a conscience. Kind of went over that. 16, abnormal ways of thinking. Abnormal thoughts are common in psychopaths because their brains are wired differently. This could cause them to make strange, odd, or off-putting comments during normal conversations. A psychopath may occasionally provide a disturbing view into their twisted minds when talking about strange things they like, mean comments about others, or statements that make it clear they don't care about anyone else. 17, poor attention span and loss of interest. Well, that covers about 50% of the American population. A lesser known sign of psychopathy is poor attention span, often resembling symptoms of ADHD. Psychopaths are prone to boredom, quickly losing interest in activities, tasks, or relationships that once captured their attention. They constantly seek new thrills or excitement, leaving behind unfinished projects, abandoned goals, and strained relationships. 18, violent tendencies, abuse, or aggression. 19, hostile and oppositional by nature. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with violent tendencies, right? And 20, masters of deception. Again, that kind of speaks more to the Machiavellian side of it, right? Is there a psychopathy test? Well, we've already went over a test for narcissism and a test for Machiavellianism, the Mach 4. The most commonly used psychopathy test is the Psychopathy Checklist, or PCLR, which is a 20-question survey used to identify the traits, characteristics, and signs of a psychopath. Technically, psychopathy is not a diagnosable condition listed on the DSM-5, but it includes symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, in addition to the predilection for violence and bringing harm to others. Psychopaths display many of the symptoms of APD and also a range of other traits, characteristics, and behaviors. While individuals with APD may or may not seek treatment, individuals who display psychopathy are likely to engage in behaviors that result in criminal charges and incarceration. In fact, the PCLR has been validated specifically with incarcerated populations, as these facilities are where psychopathy is most likely to be diagnosed. Oh. Okay. So, I'm going to leave you to reading on how to deal with the psychopaths in your life. If you're interested, head over to my YouTube channel. I have this linked. If you're at the YouTube channel, click on the links below. But we're going to move on. Make best use of our time here. We're going to jump into the different variations of the Dark Triad, right? So we can get rid of Botanica here. So the first variation we're going to cover is the vulnerable Dark Triad. And I just kind of wanted to give you a rundown of it and a rundown of the difference in the three characteristics. And I tried a whole bunch of, and I think you can even see right here, I clicked on a whole shit pot full, and there's even more, a whole shit pot full of articles. And none of them really described it as well as AI did. So I don't particularly like to use AI when looking into these things, but this particular topic, this one right here, we're going to go ahead and just use ChatGPT to give us a rundown. The vulnerable Dark Triad is a concept in psychology that encompasses three related traits: borderline personality traits, vulnerable narcissism, and secondary psychopathy. Okay, so instead of narcissism, you have vulnerable narcissism, which I kind of explained earlier. Instead of Machiavellianism, you have borderline personality disorder. And instead of psychopathy, you have secondary psychopathy. Unlike the Dark Triad, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, which are often associated with socially desirable or exploitative behaviors, the VDT is characterized by emotional instability, self-doubt, and a fragile sense of self. Key characteristics and differences: the VDT, which is the vulnerable Dark Triad, is associated with emotional instability, a fragile sense of self, relationship difficulties, and manipulative tendencies. Dark Triad is associated with narcissistic grandiosity, manipulation, and a disregard for others. VDT is driven by intrinsic desires and a need for validation. The Dark Triad is driven by external controllable factors and a desire for power and control. In essence, the VDT represents a vulnerable or dark side of the personality characterized by borderline personality traits, which are interpersonal and affect instability, identity impairment, intense anger, impulsivity, and self-harming behaviors. So instead of pushing to hurting other people and using other people to gain power or money or status the way a Machiavellian would, these people are emotionally unstable, have an identity impairment, experience intense anger, impulsivity, and self-harming behaviors. In vulnerable narcissism, a fragile sense of self, inner feelings of shame and anger, and interpersonal hypersensitivity. We kind of went over that earlier, right? They have the hypersensitivity because they already feel like the world isn't paying enough attention to them. So anyone or hurting them or making fun of them, whatever. So they feel any slight leads to hypersensitivity, man. They freak out by even like the slightest joke, right? Secondary psychopathy, the behavioral component of psychopathy, including antisocial lifestyle, poor impulse control, and non-planfulness. So psychopathy and secondary psychopathy, from what I understand, psychopathy, we kind of already went over that. That's impulsiveness, criminal behavior, uh, criminal behavior, impulsiveness, lack of guilt, lack of responsibility for the horrible things you do, being incredibly violent towards others. Secondary psychopathy is exclusively the behavioral component of psychopathy. It isn't psychopathy, which covers the things that are wrong with your brain. This is just exclusively the behavioral component of it. So it's you behaving like a psychopath without actually having that rewiring happening inside of your brain. So in contrast to the Dark Triad, the VDT is characterized by inner turmoil and self-doubt. People with VDT traits often experience intense self-criticism and feelings of inadequacy. Difficulty with emotional regulation. They may struggle to manage their emotions and can be highly reactive. And 3, relationship difficulties. Their fragile sense of self and emotional instability can lead to difficulties in forming and maintaining healthy relationships. In summary, the VDT represents a different side of personality than the Dark Triad, highlighting the importance of understanding the diverse ways in which Dark Triad can manifest an individual. Right, so I think that's a Dark Triad thing right there. So there's the big difference between Dark Triad and vulnerable Dark Triad. Dark Triad is Machiavellianism. VDT is borderline personality traits. Dark Triad is narcissism. VDT is vulnerable narcissism. Dark Triad is psychopathy. VDT is secondary psychopathy, which is just the behavioral side of psychopathy. So let's see. I was looking for a good... Is this it? No, that's the one we looked at earlier. Is there another one? I was hoping we can find another Venn diagram, since I know what the fuck that is now. Ha ha ha. Of vulnerable Dark Triad. See, the reason why I went to AI, though, is because it was so difficult to find anything on the VDT. I think realistically that's because it's a relatively new concept that was but we can at least look that up and find out who the hell exactly decided. Here we go. I might have already found an article on it and I just forgot that I had it. Okay, so let's read a little bit on the vulnerable Dark Triad. So, people with Dark Triad personalities may not be as strong as we think. So, let's see. When you think of people with Dark Triad personality traits, meaning that they are high on manipulativeness, narcissism, and psychopathy, your first association might be to people who are both confident and strong. The overlap among these traits does suggest a certain rashness as well as supreme belief in their own powers. However, just as there can be a vulnerable side to narcissism, can there also be a weakness in some people with Dark Triad personalities? Think about a boss you had or someone else who had power over you, whose behavior was unscrupulous and seemingly driven by a desire to look better than you and everyone else they dominated. Even when they prevailed, however, they never seemed to take much pleasure in having come out on top. It's possible you've been lucky enough not to have such a person in your life. However, you've got plenty of examples who demonstrate these qualities in fictional characters who, with others around, put on a front of self-aggrandizing power. At times, when they are alone and voice their thoughts, they express a strong and enduring self-hatred. Clearly, there's a disconnect between their outer presentation and inner turmoil. Although technically you might consider them exemplars of the Dark Triad, something about that inner turmoil doesn't seem to fit all that neatly into this category. Introducing the VDT. More than 10 years ago, the concept of the VDT has received far less attention than its showier counterpart. I didn't think it was 10 years ago. I figure this was within maybe the 5-year range, but 10 years ago is when it was introduced. In a way, this lack of focus is similar to the fate that occurs to the vulnerable narcissist. After all, someone who is both evil but also inwardly weak doesn't just have the same panache as the glib, attention-grabbing, charming, but equally evil psychopathic narcissist. As pointed out by the University of Quebec, I'm assuming that means, Dominic Gamache and colleagues, one of the problems in the scientific literature that has caused the VDT to lag behind the ordinary dark triad is a lack of sufficient documentation that it is a measurable entity. Prior research attempting to do so only partially took advantage of appropriate statistical methods, meaning that it could not gain traction to justify VDT's existence. There you go. That's why there's not a lot of information on it, because nobody has looked into it, or haven't looked into it a lot. However, as Gamache and his fellow researchers note, the dark triad itself might reduce to what they call the D factor in personality. Rather than be limited to narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, D could also incorporate such qualities as callousness, deceitfulness, vindictiveness, sadism, and entitlement. Flipping over the VDT, the original Miller formulation process that it would be proposed, that it would be associated with borderline personality disorder, vulnerable narcissism, and the reckless and impulsive component of psychopathy, the part that gets people in trouble. This pattern would fit the toxic people who torment others and themselves. Even as they commit acts that are antisocial in nature, they are eaten away on the inside by feelings that they are weak failures. All of this is part of a general effort by personality researchers to move beyond the categories of personality disorders cataloged in the DSM-5, being able to zone in on the clusters of underlying traits that become expressed in various behavior patterns would have important implications for understanding and treating people whose lives are so negatively affected by long-term disturbances and ways of thinking, behaving, and relating to others. Whew, what a long sentence. I ran out of breath like twice there. Testing the VDT's profile. Let's using the VDT's knowledge. Yeah, okay, we don't need that, but we can definitely read into testing the profile. With the background of Miller and colleagues' approach to identifying the VDT, the Canadian author sought to expand the statistical rigor of tests used to determine whether it indeed hangs together as a construct. Beyond this measurement aspect of their research, Gamache then tested whether VDT scores would relate to external so-called criterion variables, including the DSM-5 TR's alternate model for personality disorders, and self-reports of aggression. Okay. With their online sample of more than 1,000 French-Canadian adults, the authors used a variety of personality measures intended to test VDT's internal structure and its relation to those external criteria. Turning to the results, there ended up being two dimensions to the VDT. One of these related most strongly to borderline personality disorder, with the strongest contributors to this dimension including self-hatred, self-punishment, feelings of worthlessness, and the belief that one has no right to be alive. This general factor included such qualities as inner tension, shame, mood cycling, meaninglessness, fascination with death, and self-disgust. Forming the second dimension of the VDT were three qualities that the authors labeled reckless. Entitled, reckless, which is lack of premeditation, always getting in trouble and venting frustrations. Entitled, which is avoiding ungrateful others, wanting to get all that is deserved. And hiding, feeling weak for relying on others, feeling shame or anxiety over one's needs. Reverting back to a classic concept in the study of personality of P for general psychopathology, the authors believe that their findings point to the role of a profound self-hatred, arguably rooted in negative self-representations imbued with hostility and aggression. However, because the first factor was heavily weighted towards borderline personality disorder qualities, the findings also show that the VDT should be seen as separate from its disorder. As the authors state, borderline pathology may be quite unique among PDs and how it can be defined as a pathology in self and other representation. Okay, so this is essentially just saying that, yeah, we don't have a whole lot of information on the dark triad, the vulnerable dark triad, because it hasn't been tested a lot. They have tested it, or they have had a study look into it, and what this particular study found was that, yeah, the VDT, there is at least some sort of variation on the dark triad that is more vulnerable. That vulnerability is expressed in a form of self-hatred, shame, and a feeling of meaningless or worthlessness, right? And that is the behavior that actually pushes forward the narcissistic and the psychopathic impulsive lack of impulse control. So that is the VDT in a nutshell. There's a second variation on the dark triad called the Dark Tetrad. So we're going to go to Jordan B. Peterson over here. you know, I don't know if anybody's watching this on Twitch, but from what I hear, most people aren't fans. Most Twitchies, I'm going to call you Twitchers, I decided just now, aren't fans of Jordan Peterson. I did enjoy his first book. I read his first book and I really, really liked it. I haven't really had time to get into the second, but he's not getting into any of his political opinions in this video. All right. For those of you on YouTube, I hear it's kind of like a toss up. Jordan Peterson has a pretty heavy following on YouTube. So, you know, but I'm neither here nor there. I'm going to throw up whoever's video I want to throw up if the information they're bringing us is relevant to the topic. And this conversation he's having is pretty relevant because he's talking to the guy who's studied under the guy that founded narcissism, or at least identified what narcissism was. Okay, so he's talking to a dude who's got a lot of experience in this topic, and they're going to talk about the Dark Triad, or the Dark Tetrad, excuse me. So let's take a listen to what they have to say.
They also seem to be very low in conscientiousness. That seems to accord reasonably well with the two factors of the psychopathy scale. And so a real psychopath is someone who is willing to take what you have, let's say, and use it, and that might be the predatory aspect, and also to live off the earnings and efforts of others, and that's also an element of criminal behavior. And so you're looking at the nexus of all three of those: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. And recently, you and other researchers have added, I think this is so interesting because I think it was a real lack, you added sadism to that, which is positive delight and pleasure taken in the suffering of others. And so it's
kind of worth noting and interesting that sadism was included on the, I forgot to go to my YouTube stream. Well, hopefully I didn't pick my nose there when I'm watching. Okay, so the one of those articles that we went to that discussed psychopathy had clearly stated something to the effect of sadism is a component of psychopathy. They also had stated, and they were the only source that we went over to, by the way, that stated that psychopathy lacks the lack of impulse control, the impulsiveness, that's actually sociopathy or sociopaths, right? So that was the only source that we went over that actually stated that. So they could be potentially wrong in the idea that sadism is an aspect of psychopathy. Clearly, this fella in the leather jacket here seems to think so. He seems to think sadism is outside of its own thing outside of psychopathy. But let's take a listen to what he says.
Can you expand at all upon the definitions of Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy? And we could segue into sadism.
Yeah, I agree with all of your definitions, although what we did was spend a lot of time trying to find what's different among each of the characters and what the overlap is. Why is it that the literatures and the measures that were available always overlapped to a dangerous degree in trying to understand what's going on? So the key thing for psychopaths, in our opinion, is impulsivity and sensation seeking, which is what gets them into trouble.
Okay, see, so this guy is absolutely disagreeing with that article that we read on psychopathy. He's saying that lack of impulse control is a massive component of it. So that's just worth noting.
Trouble.
See, like I said, a lot of what's in psychology, not all by any long shot, but a lot of what's in psychopathy is theoretical, including this. It's a theory.
They may not have worse motives than the others, but they can't help it. That's why they, at the extreme levels, spend their lives in prison. They can't help responding to temptation.
Has Kyrie texted you back?
I don't want to talk about it.
You buttheads.
How's the math test?
Don't want to.
Whatever the temptation is, they go for it, and often they get what they want right away, and they keep on doing it until they get caught, and they don't seem to learn from it. So that answers just a qualification to the definition of psychopath. Now, what's underlying it, we think, is callousness for all of them. They're overlapping because at the core is a failure to have empathy. And if you have a deficit in empathy, it seems inevitable that you're going to exploit other people in one way or another because you're not getting the feedback that people with empathy get in seeing other people suffer at your hands. And the story of sadism is quite a long story, but if you want me to get into the details,
Sure.
I can do that now.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'm more sensitive to these things than other people, but I started seeing sadism in regular people. And not only is it there in everyday people, but people seem to wallow in it when the circumstances will allow it. For example, violent sports. One of my favorite sports, hockey. It's kind of pathetic watching a hockey game. The cheers are larger for the fights than for the goals. People love to see their fighter pummel the fighter of the other team or pummel anyone. And the cheers that go up in a hockey stadium are incredible. And the cheers only stop when the victim falls to the ice and starts twitching. Then a hush follows.
Okay, so I did watch this video beforehand, and I thought that was pretty hilarious. I was pretty tickled when I heard that part. This guy, he makes the statement there. I don't know if I'm more sensitive to this than other people. He could have followed that up with, or maybe I'm just wrong, but I don't know. I'm just saying. His idea, though, is that he is seeing sadism in normal everyday people. And one example of that is when you're at a hockey game and people cheer when the hockey players fight. And then he comes into this overwhelmingly exaggerated instance of a hockey player falling through the ice. What exactly did he say here? He said,
and the cheers only stop
let's see here.
When the victim falls to the ice and starts twitching.
Falls to the ice and starts twitching. I don't know. I mean, I used to play hockey when I was a kid, and my dad watches hockey games here and there. I don't know, and I did do a little look into it. There has been some nasty hockey fights, for sure. There has been some moments where guys have gotten some brain damage, but they're very few and far in between. I don't know how many times this guy has actually been to a hockey game and watched a dude get beaten so bad that he fell to the ice and started twitching. Usually twitching after being knocked out is indication of severe brain trauma. But I would love to hear what this guy had to say about folks like me who go to enjoy watching MMA and go to MMA classes. I wonder how he feels about that, right? But this guy sees sadism in the folks that enjoy violent sports. So I imagine us MMA lovers are just complete sadists in his book.
Then a hush follows over the crowd, showing the dual nature of positive and negative motivations that human beings have. But the fact that...
I mean, it could also be that the fight is enjoyable. It's exciting. Everybody is cheering for their team. So when that fight happens, there's the aggressive competitiveness, testosterone angle to it. You're hyped and you're like, I'll beat his ass. But nobody actually wants to see another human being get beaten to the point of losing brain power. I think it'd be just as simple as that, right? I don't think it needs to speak to the inner dilemma of folks. It's just like, no, we enjoy watching someone get punched in the face. We just don't enjoy watching somebody get brain damage, right? So
that they love seeing the fighting, no matter how much blood and teeth end up on the ice.
Again, I think that's contradictory to what he just said. What he had just said was a hush falls over the crowd when the person starts twitching. If we didn't care how much blood, in MMA, we have a thing called the just bleed crowd, right? We don't give a fuck about your wrestling. We don't care about your technical prowess. We're just here to see you bleed. And if a fight goes on too long without somebody getting their ass whipped, sometimes you can hear in the stands people screaming, just bleed. They'll chant it, just bleed, just bleed. It's like a thing, right? Everybody in MMA has heard of just bleed. It's a saying. And, you know, I the reality is, though, these say if the fight continues past the point that a person has gotten knocked out, right, which occasionally does happen, you'll get a Mario Yamasaki, who is a horrible, horrible referee in the UFC. You'll get a Mario Yamasaki in there who will allow a fight to go past the point that a man has been knocked out, and the other fighter is just knocking the other dude's head against the canvas, and he's just out cold, right? He's just demolishing the guy. You will hear the crowd start booing. They will get very upset. People will request this dude stop reffing. They will say this dude's a fucking douchebag, a shitty ref. He'll get torn into pieces all over social media, mostly specifically by MMA lovers, right? Because yeah, the reality is they don't want violence to the point that somebody is losing their ability to walk tomorrow, right? The reality is people don't like seeing that. They like seeing the fight. They like seeing people fight. They like seeing two really good fighters best each other. And there is the Just Bleed crowd that loves to watch two badasses beat the fuck out of each other. It's got that gladiator intensity to it, but they don't like it so much to the point that they want to see people lose their lives, limbs, or their ability to think or speak. And so I don't know if that necessarily counts as sadism, right? But this guy seems like he sure thinks so. I just thought that was very interesting.
It's disappointing in a way. And we learned a long time ago from the Europeans, they don't have to do that to make hockey a wonderful sport. That was just one. But then watching the undergraduate students at UBC, University of British Columbia, what are they doing for fun?
That explains it. He's in Canada.
Well, if you'll recall, way, way back, they used to play these archive games.
You're going to love this.
And there were some gentle ones, Pac-Man, Asteroids. I don't know if you remember those. But going down into the arcade, you see that people are gathered around one
you know where he's
of
going
the
with this?
arcade games. And so I wandered over to see it. And it was something called Mortal Kombat.
Boom. All you fucking Mortal Kombat lovers, you sadistic fucks, you're in there too. It isn't just us MMA guys. You Mortal Kombat gamers, you're all a bunch of fuck ducks.
By today's standards, isn't that bad, but the heads are torn off and the blood spurts out. And that's why the crowd was there, because it was so much more appealing than the silly little Mario Brothers stuff. And it just struck me as the beginning of my interest in what people do, especially young males, when they have time on their own. So if it's not porn, then it seems like it's violence, and it's somewhat horrifying.
That's very black-pilled.
But it's gotten worse. I don't know if you've been following the video games that are now available on your home computer. You don't need to go to an arcade and be embarrassed by what you're playing, because you can sit at home and play whatever games you want. And so now, what's it called? Grand Theft Auto. You can kill innocent bystanders, step on their heads, etc. And there are actual torture sites where you can go and torture people. You can torture animals. It's all there. And so people are paying to do this stuff. They pay for violent sports. They pay for violent movies. What's the most popular television program these days? It's called Game of Thrones. And it's the most sadistic kind of...
There it is. All you Games of Thrones lovers, you're in this with us. You're all a bunch of fucking psychos too, so...
television program that you've ever seen. People are paying for this in one way or another, and they're attracted to it. They relay stories with their friends. So this putting this picture together suggested to me that some, not all, in fact, the variance again is there, which excites a personality researcher. Some people are highly attracted to this stuff. Other people are horrified.
Okay. There you go. There you have it. So I did just want to play that so we could at least explain what the Dark Tetrad is. I'm going to throw you over to this screen. So yeah, I thought that was pretty entertaining, though. I did get a kick out of that that interview. That made me laugh quite a bit. I didn't catch the first time that he was Canadian, so that actually makes a lot more sense. You know, they're a very polite group of people, and apparently Mortal Kombat is a big issue over there. It's terrifying. Horrible society to live in that has a game like that. So anyways, yeah, so, but that is what the Dark Tetrad is. It is 4 personality traits instead of 3, instead of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. It's those 3 plus sadism, right? And sadism is, we did hear it from the previous article that we had read. Sadism is the pleasure out, you get pleasure, sometimes sexual pleasure, out of torturing, hurting other people, harming other people. So that is sadism. So there is researchers, this fella here, this is Dr. Delroy Paulus. Oh, we read that name before. I thought his name was phallus, like a penis. Well, yeah. So there's Dr. Phallus there. You know, I decide I'm going to go ahead and call him Dr. Phallus because he doesn't like MMA. So Dr. Phallus it is. So Dr. Penis over here, he and his group of fellers decided that sadism, was, to be thrown into the tetrad, which that decision in and of itself, I'm not a psychologist. I couldn't tell you if it makes logical sense or not. I'm not really here to judge that. I just, thought it was very interesting. We dive into it since we are talking about the triad. We should talk about the tetrad. But when he started going into how he sees sadism everywhere, all you fuckers in your video games, all you sickos in your Game of Thrones, you motherfucking perverts, I just had to laugh at that. That just made me laugh my ass off, right? So I don't know if you can constitute that as sadism, at least not sadism to the point that it's a personality trait you need to worry about. Some of the coolest people I've ever met, I've met at my MMA gym. They're genuinely respectful people. And yeah, they really do enjoy martial arts and they enjoy learning martial arts. They enjoy participating in it. But they, most of them, not all of them, some of them do. But most of them don't have enjoyment out of actually hurting another person, which that is actual sadism. We did read that in the other article. And I would be willing to bet if we pull up, I'm just going to do it right here and I'll throw you over to the other screen. Definition of sadism. It's going to be, let's take a look. Let's look at it together. Here, I'm going to throw you back over here. Okay, a tendency to derive pleasure, especially sexual gratification, from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation from others. That is from Oxford Languages. So that's what I figured. Here's Merriam-Webster. The meaning of sadism is the derivation of sexual gratification from the infliction of physical pain or humiliation on another person. So that is actually 2 slightly different definitions, and that does matter. They do make the point in Oxford Languages that is not just sexual gratification, but any form of pleasure. Merriam-Webster says it is exclusively sexual gratification, but the bigger difference is in the Oxford Languages Dictionary. It says from inflicting pain. What I get from that is an implication that it's you hurting other people. That's the part of sadism. That's a big fucking deal, is it's you deriving pleasure from hurting other people. Whereas Merriam-Webster says it is gratification from the infliction of physical pain, which it could mean just you hurting other people, but it could also just mean the gratification from watching other people get hurt, right? And sadism is a real thing, and that is a very fucked up thing, right? If you are a sadist, you're a pretty messed up person. That is pretty spooky to think about, having like a sadist in your life, right? But there is, something to note here. from what this feller, Dr. Pina, said, um, seeing sadism at a hockey game, seeing sadism from people playing Mortal Kombat, seeing sadism from people who enjoy Game of Thrones, is very nonsensical. For one thing, a lot of people who watch Game of Thrones, I've never watched Game of Thrones. I know tons of people who watch Game of Thrones, though, and that's kind of the reason I haven't watched it, is I enjoy doing the opposite of what everyone else is, even if that includes watching a really awesome television show. I'm, what is that? I'm contradictory. There's a word for it, though, and it kind of just means you're an asshole. But, so yeah, I'm a kind of a dick like that. Smoking that weed, coughing up a lung. So I'm a bit of a dickhead like that. But from what I understand of people who enjoy Game of Thrones, is they don't enjoy it exclusively because of the brutality. They might enjoy the brutality. They might think, oh, that's really cool. Just like, I enjoy watching UFC. Like, people beating the shit out of each other is interesting to watch. It is very enjoyable. I have been known to throw up Reddit and go to the fight porn Reddit, which it is just videos of people kicking each other's asses. But the reality is there is more reasons to enjoying Game of Thrones. A lot of people like Game of Thrones for a lot of things well outside of the fact that it's violent, right? The fact that it's violence may be something that they just deal with. It may be something that maybe adds to the story for certain. It ups the stakes of a story. You're going to be really hard pressed to make people invested in the survival of these characters when nobody's getting killed, right? And showing these people getting killed in very brutal ways increases the tension. So that's important to note. Same with UFC. There is a I guess an honor to it when you're watching two dudes go up there and do something that you wouldn't do. I wouldn't walk into the UFC and fist fight Alex Pereira, or fist fight Conor McGregor. I wouldn't go do it. Leave some other dumbass to do it, or somebody who's just as badass as he is. But there is something honorable, noble, life affirming to watch these two skilled guys throw down and beat the shit out of each other. And the technical skill that they use from a person who does train in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, it is really impressive to watch them do their thing. It is very, very impressive to watch a guy like Khabib go out there and throw down his Dagestani wrestling moves, man. It's like, how did he fucking do that? So there is a element of it that's a technical appreciation for the art form that you're not going to get from just watching him practice, right? So again, that it's the same. It's essentially just a martial arts exhibition, and if you enjoy martial arts, you're going to enjoy a martial arts exhibition, regardless of whether or not it's violent or not. Again, it's not going to be a technically impressive exhibition though if it isn't violent. That's just the reality. I hate to tell you, but people, you need to show somebody. Two guys, preferably, throwing down some pretty incredible moves, that's going to involve them beating someone's ass. It just is what it is. That's the sport, So, and again, it's silly to assume that leads to sadism in other people. But okay, rant's over. I spent way too much time ranting on this dweeb in the leather jacket, Mr. Penis Face, or whatever his name was. Let's go over and talk a little bit about the light triad. So there is a third variation on the dark triad. You had the dark triad, you had the vulnerable dark triad, the tetrad, and then light triad. And what is the light triad? Well, if you didn't already guess it, it is the opposite of the dark triad. The light triad consists of Kantianism, humanism, and faith in humanity. People with these traits are said to be primarily motivated by intimacy and self-transcendent values. The light triad was devised in contrast to the dark triad of personality, traits associated with narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Both sets of traits have been correlated with other facets of personality, such as intellect and openness to experience. Light triad personality traits have been embodied by a number of notable figures throughout history, such as Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Nelson Mandela. So, history and overview. No, get out of my face. All humans have within themselves both a light and a dark side. However, everyone varies as to the extent to which they consistently exhibit light and dark patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in their daily lives. The term light triad of personality refers to a group of three related personality traits that tend to be exhibited more often by individuals who are overall more likely to exhibit light patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in their daily lives. The three related traits are faith in humanity, which is an overall tendency to see the best in people and believe that most people are basically good; humanism, a belief in the inherent dignity and worth of other humans; and Kantism, treating people as ends unto themselves rather than unwitting pawns, which means you're here for the relationship, right? The what was it? The real adventure was the friends we made along the way, or some thing like that. The light triad of personality has been studied extensively by psychologists, and there is now a great deal of evidence to support the existence of this group of traits. Furthermore, research has shown that the light triad of personality is related to a number of important outcomes, including overall mental and physical health, relationship satisfaction, and life satisfaction. So you're going to be much happier with these three characteristics, than you are with their opposites. And which is contradictory to the very popular thought that a lot of people have, that sociopaths, psychopaths, Machiavellians, and narcissists tend to be the more successful people in life. That may be true in, like, say, a CEO aspect, or say maybe like in Hollywood or something like that. But in general, according to some studies out there, when it comes to just being satisfied with your own life, happy, mentally and physically healthy, and having satisfaction with the relationships with your life, these three traits are the real winners here, right? So, anyway, I am going to post this article on my YouTube for you to take a read of. But the truth is, I'm actually about 10 minutes over time on my stream. And we never did actually end up getting to the reasons for development of the triads, which I promised you the entire stream we could get to. So that makes me a liar. I'm a Machiavellian right there, just manipulated you the whole time so you'd stay till the end. And then I did have some articles that were criticizing the Dark Triad, specifically reasons why they felt it wasn't truly, it wasn't a real theory. Like, it's a theory, but it's not a theory that's functional. And then I was going to introduce you to these two tests here: the Dark Triad personality test. This is at openpsychometrics.org. They have a lot of really fun tests that you can take there. There are so many different kinds. The Dirty Dozen test over at IDR Labs. Again, another website that has a whole lot of different tests. You can actually look right here. They have the Pony test. The My Little Pony test is a just for fun test to determine which character from the My Little Pony universe you most closely resemble. The Unlikability test, how much of an asshole you are. I think a lot of us could probably use that when you have the anger test, love test, political test, Jung type test, psychopath test, Dark Triad test. What I have pulled up right here, because the Dark Triad test we actually have over here. These are two real tests that you can take. These on these websites aren't the real variation. These are variations that were created by these websites on the test. So they're not the actual psychological tests that you would take. But they're really short. This one's only 12 questions. The Dirty Dozen test is a test of only 12 questions. This is their own spin on the Dirty Dozen test. This is the IDR DDT. Is not the equivalent of the Dirty Dozen. They kind of got to put there for, excuse me. They kind of have to put that there so they don't get sued. But it's only 12 questions. It's really easy. Here, we'll do this one real quick. See how psychotic I am. I tend to seek prestige or status. I'm going to go with slightly disagree. I would almost even remain neutral on there. I tend to manipulate others to get my way. Nah, I disagree. I think that's pretty shitty. I tend to be cynical. Oh yeah, I agree. I'm very cynical. I tend to want others to pay special attention to me. Disagree. I get a little bit awkward if there's too many people focused on me, I have used flattery to get my way. Well, I have before. I'll go with slightly agree. I mean, it has happened. I don't do it all the time, though. I have used deceit or lied to get my way. Again, like, I feel like everybody has done that, though, right? Like, to a tiny extent, just like one time in your life. I have to slightly agree just out of honesty. I don't do it all the time, though, but when I was young, I did it a lot. I tend to exploit others toward my own end. Nah, I heavily disagree with that. I tend to lack remorse. No, I don't heavily disagree with that too. I definitely feel remorseful. If I kill a jumping spider, I feel very sad about that. I tend to be callous or insensitive. I would disagree with that. There's people that I can be callous and insensitive towards, but that's people who are usually callous and insensitive towards me. I tend to want others to admire me. I mean, I slightly agree with that. It's nice to be admired, right? I'm not going to say, oh, I don't care. Like, no, it's nice when people admire me. I tend to expect special favors from others. Nah, I slightly disagree. I mean, it depends on if I gave them a favor. I tend not to be too concerned with the morality of my actions. It depends on what action. I'm going to stay neutral because, there is some things that I do that I don't care if it's morally wrong, but okay. Your results. Me. I'm lower than the average population on narcissism, right? So there you go. This makes you 6.83% darker than the average person. Well, that's not too bad. Where was I? I was high on psychopathy. Okay. And slightly high on Machiavellism and low on narcissism. Okay. Well, I did know that because I've taken these tests before. and it does come out slightly high on the psychopathy, but it's only slightly. It's not like I'm like way up here like, "Oh, you're just like out there killing kittens all day, you fucking freak." Only 6.8 darker than the rest of you. So, that's fine. And to some extent I'm a little proud of that. But I suggest going to this website here, IDR Tests. It's a really fun website. They got all different kinds of tests for you to click on. I'll link it on my YouTube. See, it just goes and goes. This shit just goes, son. Oh, I accidentally clicked on that. I didn't intend to do that. The Space Marine Chapter Test. Okay, I don't know exactly what that's about. It keeps clicking on the thing. There, this is what I wanted. Yeah, look at all these tests. It is just crazy. Stress test, the cat test, the hot girl test. The hot girl summer test measures how innocent or rowdy young women have been during the summer season. Oh. The Barbie test. What is that? The Gilmore Guys test. Enneagram, I don't know what that is. Enneagram tests are often criticized for focusing too much on the positive. The negative Enneagram test will show you your Enneagram dark side. The food test. The food addiction test. Oh, I don't need that. I know I'm already addicted to food. Wait, what? Wait. The gay type test. Based on the work of sociologist Richard Hauser's 1962 study, the gay type test will determine what kind of pre-liberation male homosexual you would be. All right, so there's tons there for you guys. You're all going to find something to enjoy there. So I'll leave you to do that and then check out this other one, openpsychometrics.org. You can take the Dark Triad personality test. That's their variation of it. I'm not going to take this one, though, because that one was like a 50-question test, if I remember correctly. So, maybe on a different stream, we will go over a little more on the Dark Triad. I personally would like to go over more on the Light Triad and the Tetrad, the Dark Tetrad, and the Vulnerable Dark Triad. That might be fun for another stream. Go over the Dark Triad variations, and then I can cover all of the web pages that I already had for the development of Dark Triad, personality traits, and criticisms of the Triad itself. Because I went and pulled up web pages for all that, and then I must at some point in the stream just ranted my ass off, and so now we didn't have time for it. But still, I hope you guys learned something. To anybody that did tune into the live stream, I appreciate you. Cutie Pie, I know you were watching, so thank you for watching as always. To anybody else who watched the live stream, I really, really appreciate it. Please leave me a like and a follow if you enjoyed the content. If you watch this on YouTube and you enjoyed the video, which I hope you did. If you did, then please like and subscribe for more content like this. Every Monday, I go over something psychology or mental health orientated. And next Monday I will be going over the most common personality disorders in America. So we're going to be going over what the most common disorders people have are. Tomorrow is Terrifying Tuesdays, and I will be going over Reddit Forest Ranger stories. I think I already said that. If you don't know what that is, you should definitely tune in for it or find it on my YouTube channel. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you to anybody who watched. Hopefully you guys will come back tomorrow for 7 p.m. for some scary stories, or if not, then come back Monday, 7 p.m. for some more mental health topics. Until then, you guys have a wonderful rest of your night, and thank you so much, and I'll talk to you then. Peace.